local people. Local news and events. Local sports. Local matters. For all things Lloydminster and area, this is Live with Kurt Price.
Hey, welcome to the Lloydminster Heavy Oil Show. It is our pleasure to bring you another great broadcast from the Lloydminster Heavy Oil Show, which wraps up this afternoon and has been fantastic. Almost 3 days here at the Lloydminster exhibition grounds. But we want to thank the new Lloydminster Nissan, of course. If you're looking for a new vehicle, get down to the new Lloydminster Nissan in our new building. Beautiful, bright showroom that is packed up with vehicles. But you know what? The parking lot is jam-packed. In fact, inventory has never been better. The color, the make, the model that you're looking for, whether it's new or pre-owned, you can get into it for $59 a month right now at the new Lloydminster Nissan. The new Lloydminster Nissan, we won't sell you a car, we'll help you buy one. Well, our guest here today at the Lloydminster Heavy Oil Show is Deidra Garyk, and she put on a fantastic show here the other day with Scott Moe and Danielle Smith. She's an energy advocate. How many years in the business, Deidra?
This year it's 20 years. It's pretty hard to believe. For the longest time I kept saying, about 15, and then I had to do the math, and it's 20 this year.
Well, welcome, Deidra.
About half of what Tracy's got.
Yeah, I'm 46, so if I started when I was 16, I won't say the math. But this is our Patchwork Show, the most biased oil and gas podcast on the internet.
Yes.
And we have had Deidra talk to us via our Zoom meetings. One time we did a show, but here we are live and in person because she's been here at the show for the last couple of days.
Deidra gave us a line that we use all the time, and it is, I'm not anti-green, but I am pro-common sense.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
I use it.
And my line is that Canada's oil and gas is the green energy.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Thank you to Superior Water. Superior Water is proud to provide you with the purest drinking water possible. And I drink it because I like the taste. I believe it is Superior Water. Just $3 a jug. You get a great consistent taste. And ice for the Crown Royal is just $2 a bag. 2 locations in Lloydminster. Visit them beside Sheepskin Loft on 57th Avenue. And you can also stop in at their coin-operated location just by 7-Eleven, just off Highway 17 South. At Superior Water, water treatment is what they do, and they do it well. Well, just a couple of notes here. Meals in the Fields. We're heading out to Brad Ferguson's today. I talked to Brad this morning, and I tell you, we're running into so many farmers that are done now. It's amazing how quickly people are getting done because of this nice weather that we've had, the hot weather that we've had, and the canola is not coming off as nice as people would like and as good as people would like, but the wheat is okay. It's not the best year by the sounds of it, but it's not the worst year either. So we're heading out to Brad Ferguson's. He's still going, and when I talked to him this morning, he said they did have some rain, but they had about the same rain yesterday, and they were still able to get out about 1 o'clock, and he's hoping for that again today. So we're going to head out. We're going to take him a roast beef meal courtesy of Diamond 7 Meats and Sobeys here in Lloydminster. The tent guys supply the tables and chairs, and we also want to thank the new Lloydminster Nissan and Vical Agro, as well as the Gary Melka Foundation. Listen to this, Deidra. A gentleman came to one of our meals, not a farmer, an engineer, came to one of our meals, thought it was so great to feed the farmers, left behind some money in his will so that we can continue doing this from year to year to year. So we call it the Gary Melka Foundation. What it is his family. Every fall they get in touch with me and say, we're ready to go with Meals in the Fields again. Isn't that tremendous?
Aren't we grain-fed and fossil-fueled?
Grain-fed and fossil-fueled. I love it. And one more note that I want to pass along. Don't forget, Bobcats' home opener is tomorrow night against Fort McMurray as the Oil Barons come to Lloydminster at the Civic Centre, 7 p.m. tomorrow night. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk to Deidra Garyk, and we're going to find out all about that fantastic conversation that she had with Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith.
At Lloydminster and District Co-op, membership matters more. Because being part of a co-op means you're connected to something bigger than yourself. From long-held legacy by those who built our communities, to people you call family, friends, and neighbors. When you're a Lloyd Co-op member, you're an owner in a local business that prides itself on purpose alongside profit. You earn cash back. You help support causes that matter most, and you're building a better way of life for the next generation. Membership matters more.
It's more than just taxes at L&A CPA. Assurance, accounting, retirement planning, estate planning, business consulting, financial consulting, farm program support, and bookkeeping. But yes, there is always taxes. The team at L&A CPA is committed to helping you achieve your best results and will be there to assist you every step of the way. L&A CPA, with offices in Provost, Vermilion, and Lloydminster.
Welcome back inside the Lloydminster Heavy Oil Show for Live with Kurt Price. This edition of Patchwork, brought to you in part by BioClean Disaster Services. BioClean Disaster Services is committed, certified, reliable, and will help you get your life back after a fire, flood, or disaster. So when a disaster strikes, you need somebody that's going to take care of your belongings. You need somebody that's going to take care of your property, of course, and get you back to where you were as quickly as possible before the disaster. BioClean Disaster Services does all that, but they also take great pride in taking care of you and your family along the way. BioClean Disaster Services not only is Lloydminster's largest restoration company, they're also the local restoration company. 1-833-246-8326, BioClean Disaster Services. And we're here at the Lloydminster Heavy Oil Show for this edition of Patchwork, and I don't know if I introduced Tracy Kay. I just kind of assume everybody knows
Nice to
Tracy
meet you.
Kay is.
Nice to meet you.
So he's our co-host. Tracy Kay is the co-host, and Deidra Garyk is an energy advocate and spent 20 years in the business. She's a free agent right now, we should mention as well. So the biggest question that I have for Deidra, just before we get into the oil prices here, Tracy, is what do we got to do to bring you to Lloydminster? What do we got to do to get you into Lloydminster? Come on, what does Calgary have to offer?
You know what? My experience here has been just fantastic. Everybody has been so great. I know, there's such a great sense of community here. I kind of don't want to go home. I'm waiting for my tour later on this afternoon.
You don't have to.
It's been great.
But think about this. She gets treated royally here, and then she goes back to her house in Calgary, and they go, well, she's just going home. Here, it's like the carpet, and they take care of her hotel rooms. Brian Zinchuk was here as her bodyguard going around the show from Pipeline Online. And so, I mean, you've got it set up here.
I do, yeah. No, I have to say there's a real sense of community, and I think that's represented by the fact that this show is put on by volunteers. Like, this is a first-class show put on by volunteers, and I'm absolutely blown away by the size of it, by the professionalism, and the sense of community that I can feel from this show. Like, kudos to all of you that are involved with it.
And since you've been here, the oil prices are up, Tracy.
The oil prices are up. If you talk about good shows, Calgary is always a show that we always just think is a staple show. But then, in my opinion, in Western Canada, the next best show is Lloydminster. Pound for pound, I think it's the best show in Canada, just based on what we get for turnout and the people and the atmosphere and everything else. Yeah, so prices are up. We were talking yesterday. The Americans and everybody want to see $70 US a barrel to really be happy. The OPEC people want $80 US a barrel to be really happy. So they're going to continue to maybe hold back on their production to get out back on the market because they want to see prices get back up to 80. So right now we're close, but you know our differential is about $16, and I don't like that. I like our differentials from Canadian to American to be tighter. So we're at $53.51 US a barrel for Canadian Western Select, and we've $69.45 for WTI. So we're still about a $16 differential. We need that to get tighter. But as the WTI goes up, then our Western Canadian Select follows that. So lots of times we don't catch that, and when we see the prices, sometimes we see the differential further apart until we catch up, and then we're always just a little bit step behind. By the way, I got my Tomcat watch on this morning. Kurt said his battery's out because I'm a producer now. He says I didn't have time to change the watch battery in his...
We take a break every time Tracy says he's the producer now.
Yeah, only water because he's not driving. But anyways, carry on. Let's go with the show.
Okay, Deidra, let's talk about your conversation that you had yesterday with both premiers, Scott Moe and Danielle Smith. I think everybody in the room really enjoyed that conversation. They were kind of preaching to the choir there a little bit yesterday, but was there anything that really stood out to you about that conversation?
Well, first of all, I'd really like to thank Mayor Gerald Albers for inviting me to moderate that panel. I have to tell you, that's a career highlight for me to get to sit down with our two premiers who have been such excellent advocates for the industry. I have a few takeaways. I was fortunate enough, as I think you were there too, Kurt, to walk around with them outside to see the outside exhibitors in the morning for about an hour. And I saw a mutual respect and admiration for each other. So I think that that's going to help our two provinces work collaboratively to ensure that we have, similar regulations that aren't going to damage the industry, but also allies in addressing maybe challenging federal regulations and laws, etc. So for me, that's actually really important. That relationship between our two provinces, these two key energy, oil, gas, coal, uranium producing provinces is really important. I think the other thing is they unapologetically support the industry. We heard a lot of it yesterday, but we've also seen it displayed publicly from them, and that's really important. There's a consistent message from them, what we heard yesterday to maybe a favorable audience, but we do hear that from them publicly, and I think that's really important considering we don't have that advocacy from our federal government. And then I think the other side of it is they really do want to work on ensuring that we have favorable regulations in place. I heard Premier Smith talking to some of the exhibitors yesterday asking, well, how can we, the Alberta government, make your life easier? And how do we kind of align with what Saskatchewan's doing? So again, mutual respect and admiration to try and work together for the betterment, I think, of the industry and for the citizenry, ultimately.
There was at one time you and I had talked the night before at the opening ceremonies, and we had discussed what is next for this industry, and you were planning on asking about pipelines. Now, I think a lot of people in that room, if there was a moment that kind of shocked them, it might have been when Danielle Smith said she'd like to revisit Keystone.
Oh, yeah, that was a shock for me, too, actually. So the reason that I asked the question is because her and I were both at the Canadian Energy Executive Association conference in Banff at the end of August. And she was one of the first speakers, and she mentioned, well, depending on who wins the U.S. election in November, there may be talks to resurrect the Keystone Pipeline. And I immediately thought, wow, that's a high-risk project for a private company. So who pays for it? Like, do we think we're going to have private investment? Or does this become another government project? Which, I have to say, with the way that Trans Mountain expansion went, I'm not super confident in the skills of government to build large infrastructure projects like that. But she seems insistent that we're going to get private capital if indeed, this actually does go ahead. Her prediction was that it would get signed into, a bill signed into law in the U.S. Shortly after a Donald Trump win. And she also mentioned that Hal Quisley, former president of TC Pipelines, a guy who would really know pipelines, that he might be backing that project in some way or getting the backing. So that was something I had not heard of yet. So I was actually really glad I got the opportunity to ask her that question.
Deidra, would that be because you think that both governments are going to change? Is that why? She's got to anticipate that Trump is going to get in below in the U.S. and that we're going to have a change of government in Canada for those two things to ignite. Is it not?
She must. Yeah, I know. I'm still hesitant, maybe I'll use that word. I'm hesitant that would be a project that'll go, but man, it's pretty hard to argue against Hal Quisley. So I don't know. I think that's going to be another project to watch to sort of see where this goes. But I think you're right. Like it's probably less about maybe the capital and the operational ability to build it, and more about the political barriers.
It's our quickest ease is to come south. We had Jim Ryder on yesterday, and I mean his ultimate dream and part of his positioning is that we can go east and west to Tidewater, not south to Tidewater. That would be an amazing dream. We would believe that could happen in our lifetime, but right now, part of that would be our quickest access is the easier we can get to Tidewater. Unfortunately, we have to pay the toll booth at the American border every time our stuff goes down there, which hits our oil hard for that reason. But
it does.
Well, did it surprise you when you asked Scott Moe what he needs from the federal government and what his answer was? Is there a change in the federal government? Because if I'm the moderator, it takes me back a minute to go, whoa. I don't expect you to be that honest.
Yeah. Well, that's what surprised me. Now, did it surprise me that he needs a change in federal government? Not at all. But I'm surprised that he was that blunt. But you know what? I think we have to start being that blunt. And it doesn't matter what party's in power. We need government in place that understands how business needs to be done. We can't have regulatory overreach and it being extremely burdensome, and it doesn't matter what color sits in that chair. We cannot have government that is going to continue to hamstring development in Canada, be it oil and gas, be it all types of resources. Heavy emitters, they're definitely going after the heavy emitting industries. Agriculture shouldn't sit back and think that they're not coming after them, because they absolutely will. Like, the emissions are kind of their target, and that's how they're kind of quelling business investment and expansion in Canada.
They've already started. We've already started coming after agriculture.
Yeah.
We really have.
we got to. Kurt and I were talking on all the interviews we had yesterday again. Stephen Harper, once again, I keep quoting this, if you get the country in a good economical state, all the rest of the problems are manageable. Yeah. And what comes of that is we're not asking, even all the times we've had the, what was the roughneck guy's name that came here years ago?
Bernard.
Bernard the Roughneck, and all these people that we had when we were doing rallies through COVID and those kind of things. We've never said, please just give us a bunch of handouts. In the oil industry in 46 years, I've never sat there and said, you know what, we've been treated unfairly. We've been treated all these different ways. All we want to do is let us sell our oil, go back to work, and this country will absolutely thrive if we're allowed to do that.
The other thing that came up towards the end of the conversation was the carbon tax. Mm-hmm. This, what kind of a barrier, Deidra, do you see the carbon tax being for not for you and I when we're living our everyday lives, but in the actual oil industry? Is it a barrier?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I have a couple of thoughts on it. I think maybe one way I'll say it is it's been in place sort of long enough that companies have sort of figured out how to maneuver around it. So even if they don't particularly like it because it does add extra cost, they're figuring it out. Businesses need certainty. I mean, Tracy, now that you have your business, I'm sure you can corroborate this.
Because he's a producer now.
Because he's a producer.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
I'm a producer.
Do we have to stop here?
Good thing it's water.
Sure it is.
I'm drinking water out of my plastic water bottle.
Yeah. From the producer side, I don't understand that part of it. I want you to elaborate on that answer, Deidra. But what I understand is that it's like going into a smoking section and asking that one person to stop smoking in that corner while the rest of the building isn't smoking. And that's one smoker in a room of 10,000. The amount of difference that made on that one person smoking in that room was so tiny. And so I just think of the massive amount of trees and that are taking all of that carbon anyways, more than ample in our country to do that. In my opinion, it's just another grab for somebody to try to create more revenue. And honestly, from a super biased position here, we just keep adding on to stuff to try to create more revenue instead of just letting us prosper, and we'll give you the revenue in the oil and gas industry. What are your thoughts on anything more on the carbon thing, Deidra?
Well, I have written a couple of articles on the carbon tax. The challenge with the carbon tax is that it's just not effective. The data is out there. Our emissions are not decreasing. The government has had to admit that they don't really have a way to track as to whether it even can be effective. They don't have a way to track whether that carbon tax is directly affecting any emissions reductions or increases. So right then and there's a problem. There's a data deficiency.
You can't put it through a machine to record that. That's the point, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult. So, I mean, there's certainly that. We're not seeing a huge change in behavior because there's only so much that you can and maybe are willing to do to change your behavior that is going to affect emissions. We do know that it is having an impact on affordability. That's out there. The data is out there. And then the other thing is global competitiveness. Our largest trading partner, the U.S., doesn't have a carbon tax. And many other places in the world don't have a carbon tax. So again, we're hamstringing ourselves in a way that is impacting competitiveness without an ability to show a direct correlation to value, like meaning actual emissions reductions.
Prove how this tax is doing anything, and prove how you're monitoring it in the simple terminology, right? That's really what we're asking the government to provide. And they just, anytime that we're taxed on anything, the taxpayers, people just want to have understanding on anything that they're paying for. And when they don't, they're going to be upset about it, especially producers. Mm-hmm. Why is this? Where's the science? Where's all of the machines? Have you got 4,000 or 400,000 drones watching the air and checking through calibration and that? No, you're not doing any of that, but you're still asking us to pay this because this is what you think it's going on. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with it as a producer.
What about carbon sequestering? Do you see that, like, because it doesn't seem to be appeasing people?
Tell me what that means, Kurt.
Well, you tell people, like, we're going to sequester carbon, and they don't really care. They don't see it as being a benefit to the world. The tree huggers, for a better.
What are they going to ask you? First question they're going to ask you: is it going to cost me? Well, first thing they're going to say: is it going to cost me?
They're saying it doesn't make a difference.
Well, I think one of the arguments that the environmentalists make is that. Well, actually, I think there's two fundamentals, sorry. They're saying it's not proven technology, so it's not proven that they can actually sequester the carbon long term. So they're arguing, it's going to escape from the rock and, we're going to have all this CO2 in the air, which I don't think is accurate. I mean, we've been doing carbon sequestration for many, many years here in Canada. But the other argument, which I think is a stronger argument to support what it is that they actually want. They are not interested in environmental protection. They say that carbon capture and storage is going to allow for more oil and gas extraction, and that is what they don't want. They don't actually care about emissions. They don't want the oil and gas extracted. Oil and gas, to me, represents freedom. It represents prosperity. Those are things that these people are just not interested in, and they are trying to quash that. They are not trying to cut the emissions. They're trying to quash the development.
Okay, but carbon credits, because Justin Trudeau seems to use them, seem to be all right. Can you explain carbon credits to me?
Oh, man. Yeah, carbon credits. Boy, how long do we have?
30 seconds.
Certainly
give us the condensed version of that, carbon credits, yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly no expert in carbon credits or carbon offsets, but, here's my challenge with those. I do think that it is a way that rich people get to pollute. It's a way that they get to continue a certain lifestyle while trying to essentially virtue signal and say, well, hey, I'm doing a good thing. So there's all kinds of controversy about carbon credits. Is it sequestration through reforestation efforts? Is it through direct air capture that you would get some sort of carbon credit for that? Is it that your company found a way to lower their emissions so you can offset somebody else's? And who monitors it, who measures it, who audits to make sure that credit is actually what it is? So Microsoft has been spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on forest-based carbon credits. Well, one of their forests started on fire. So they emitted a bunch of carbon. Well, that's not great. So yeah, the whole thing is...
The tree huggers don't get much time on the soapbox when that's happening, right?
We don't hear about that.
They don't.
No.
We don't hear about that.
Same as we didn't really hear about a coal plant opening up again in British Columbia.
Yeah, boy, that was breaking news on Tuesday night. As the Liberal caucus is meeting, well, apparently only 2/3 of the caucus showed up. But anyway, as 2/3 of the Liberal caucus showed up for their retreat, they were opening a coal plant. It's I don't know. I don't even know what to say with the hypocrisy and the media's willingness to suppress certain stories.
Well, it's so funny because if you just look at the Great Lakes area and you look at all the cities that border, just even across Canada, that have the refineries and everything as soon as you hit the southern part or as soon as you cross over to the American border. So here we are carbon taxing and trying to capture and all that, and literally waving across the street with all the other refineries and that don't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. So it's like our border, there's a Saskatchewan law, and then the other guy's sitting there going, we don't have that law, and he's waving at us across the street in Lloydminster. Mm-hmm. There's just so much of that hypocrisy that's going on because they don't get to do anything with those because that's on U.S. soil.
Well, you mentioned the toll booth, right? It's too bad that toll booth doesn't stop emissions.
Yeah.
If there was, EVs. Another EV battery company today says they're delaying building in Canada after they've already got taxpayer money from the Liberal government. Everything the Liberals have done here has kind of backfired on them when it comes to EVs. Are we the only people that saw this coming?
Yeah, the whole thing of governments picking winners and losers. I'm not saying we shouldn't have EVs.
I'm just saying
by
2035, we got to sell every EV. Every car is an EV.
Convenience will never. The inconvenience will never supersede. There's the line of the day. The inconvenience will never supersede the gas vehicle ever. As I'm on this microphone right now, that will never, ever, ever happen. Yeah. It would have to be something where we have 6 days to travel to go see her in Calgary because we're charging up every whatever. I'm teasing you, but
what's the price going to do now that we have 100% tariff on China's EVs? So.
Yeah, that's a lack of access to affordable. Oh no! We're hitting all the controversial topics. These are great discussions because I think they're really relevant to where we're at right now, and they do represent sort of this energy future. What is it going to look like? And I don't think the energy future is going to be created by governments and or bureaucrats who don't have an understanding. Right. So. I was fortunate to be part of and serve a delegation that went to Ottawa in November to talk to a number of very senior bureaucrats. And one of those people was a senior policy advisor to Transport Canada. And so we were sharing some of our challenges, and she shared what the ministry's goals were, and that included decarbonization. So I asked her to define and sort of expand on what exactly does decarbonization mean to Transport Canada. And she talked about wanting to essentially turn all of the heavy equipment and light duty trucks, etc., into EVs. And we pushed back and said, well, look, we operate in remote regions. This just isn't going to be reasonable. We operate very big heavy equipment in remote regions in Canada. And her response, straight-faced, was, oh, that's okay. The government's planning to expand charging infrastructure across Canada. And I realized at that moment that that person has probably never left Ottawa. So she doesn't realize what rural Canada looks like. There's no grid infrastructure.
Talk about the when British Columbia had the flooding here, was it 1 or 2 years ago? And all of the stuff capsized here, I'm trying to remember what part of that was. All the flooding in that, everything happened. The grid's down. There is no Houston. Talk about Houston. The grid's down. $900 to charge your Tesla. $900 to charge. The grid's down. So how do you think all those people were communicating? They were in their vehicles. They were plugging in their cell phones in a gas-operated unit to talk to their mom and dad and tell them they're safe. And all of those people that, when all that grid went down, there is no electric vehicles. There's no way to charge them. No. The diesel and gas-powered cranes, diggers, bulldozers and all that got that whole infrastructure back into British Columbia again. We can talk about 2035 and go, man, look what we just did. High five each other. Everybody says we got all these EV vehicles. All right, I got to charge now.
Yeah,
how am I going to charge this thing? I'm going to need some natural gas, providing a generator to the grid that's going to get me to charge this thing. It's not sustainable, and it's going to cost us $1,000 a charge to charge a vehicle. It's not going to come down that we can't do it. It's going to come down that it's got to be a cost-effective thing. All paths are going to lead back to fossil fuels. And if somebody says I'm driving around in this wonderful EV vehicle and it's costing me $5,000 a month to charge it, they're going to whimper. And they're going to want to go back to everything they had before. I say this every single time on our show. Find me something's better and cheaper than what we're doing already, and then we will have to say, yes, that's awesome, but we haven't yet.
So here we are, we're toting the benefits of fuel, of oil and gas, and that can be controversial now. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to bring in Brian Zinchuk, and we're going to talk about what may be the craziest bill in the history of free speech, and that is Bill C-59. We'll talk about that. More with Deidra Garyk and with Brian Zinchuk when we return.
How can you help support the oil and gas industry and jobs in Western Canada? The answer is closer than you think. Sell your scrap metals to PWM Steel. PWM sells scrap iron to Evraz, located in Regina. Evraz's #1 customer is the energy sector, building pipes and plates for the oil and gas industry. PWM Steel is your locally owned metal recycler and steel service center in the area. Plus, they're a strong supporter of the community. PWM Steel, your top steel supplier for Alberta and Saskatchewan for 40 years.
At Jason Arden Associates Cooperators, we're proud to be a top-rated local insurance company that offers flexible solutions and expert advice for all your insurance and investment needs. We'll work with you to tailor your insurance specific to your needs, and we offer investment advice that always puts you first.
At Cooperators, one of our core values is to give back to the communities that we live in. Thanks to the support of our clients in Lloydminster and area, in 2023, Jason Arden Associates has donated $40,000 to local nonprofits, charities, students, athletes, and other special events. How does your insurance company support our community?
At CK McKean Roofing, they understand what it took to put that roof over your head for your family. With over 20 years of experience under their belt, they strive to show you that with their workmanship and their integrity. Not all roofing companies are created equal, and that's why CK McKean Roofing encourages you to focus on your most important investments, your home and your family. CK McKean Roofing. Roofers do it on top.
At Diamond 7 Meats, we work with local farm families to provide a high-quality product and a great selection for you. Try our mouth-watering smokies, pulled pork, roast beef, and more, made pure and natural with no additives or fillers. We offer custom processing, and our experienced team works for you to provide a selection of sausage, burgers, and jerkies made to your specifications. Take your grilling to the next level with a Yoder smoker. Complete the grilling experience with a Canadian-made, award-winning line of House of Q barbecue sauces. We're locally owned and operated, and we look forward to seeing you today.
I'm Brian Zinchuk of PipelineOnline.ca. I used to be a pipeliner, and I've spent the last 15 years reporting on energy in Saskatchewan. PipelineOnline.ca provides comprehensive coverage of light oil, heavy oil, lithium, helium, power production including coal, wind, solar, geothermal, natural gas, and nuclear. There's a lot happening in Saskatchewan's energy sector, and Pipeline Online is there for all of it. No one else comes even close.
Welcome back. If you haven't checked out Wellings of Lloydminster yet, we invite you to do so. Wellings of Lloydminster is a community within a community. It's over by the new 7-Eleven in Petro-Canada on the west side of Lloydminster, and it's perfect for those that are trying to get more freedom into their lives as they realize, hey, I want to start traveling more. Well, you can travel and not have to worry about somebody shoveling your driveway, something happening back home, and you being worried about pipes freezing, anything like that. And you don't have to go out and cut grass at plus 40 either, because it's maintenance free. It's Wellings of Lloydminster, and the best thing that you can do is have a look through one of their awesome villas. They come in 1- and 2-bedroom villas. The 2-bedroom villas, some of those have garages, so if you like to have a workbench in your garage and park a vehicle, you can do that as well. If you like to have a pet, you can have a pet. Check out Wellings of Lloydminster at 780-872-8537. We are back with Tracy Kay, who is, what do you do now in the oil field, Tracy?
I'm a producer.
Producer, he is a producer. Brian Zinchuk is the owner and editor of PipelineOnline.ca. He's also owner, of course. And we have energy advocate Deidra Garyk joining us as well today to talk about...
We all advocates.
Well, I think we are, but
I think we're
Deidra...
super biased, opinionated. Let's talk oil and gas advocates on this show.
That's part of actually what I wanted to get into, to be quite honest.
That we're all advocates?
No, that...
We're not avocados,
that we've
we're
got,
advocates?
1,000 people here, and why are we some of the few people that are actually going out there and screaming at the top of our lungs? We need to stand up for ourselves, because the rest of the industry and, the companies with floors of lawyers are not fighting the stuff that we're talking about right now. Deidra is independent. I'm independent. You're independent.
I'm an independent producer.
Oh, there you go.
This might be a long thing here.
But okay. But I mean, but we heard Pathways Alliance, Deidra, say they can't speak out against it. They can't really talk against it because there's millions of dollars on the line here.
It's a really tough one. I do feel for them and understand why it is that after Bill C-59 got passed, they pulled everything down. I did have a chance to talk to one of their senior executives, and so one of the penalties that a company could be subject to if they're found in contravention of the Competition Act now is that they may have to pay 3% of gross worldwide revenues. So for a company like Cenovus, that's $60 billion. Like that's outrageous. That's just not a risk that they can reasonably take, right? So I don't know. I don't know how you walk that fine line, because we know that our big oil and gas producers are being targeted by environmental groups. They're successfully using the Competition Act already to go after what they deem to be greenwashing or deceptive marketing. And it's not going to stop. I believe these changes to C-59 were put in place at the request of environmental activists because they want more teeth to go after producers.
Should we actually explain Bill C-59 to make sure everybody kind of understands?
Yeah,
Who's the best person to explain that?
Well, let me go over some of the broader stuff, and Deidra's definitely got more experience on the narrower stuff here. So Bill C-59, which was passed at the end of June, is the law of the land. Basically, it was amendments to the Competition Act, which says that if you cannot say publicly, if you were a company, good things about what you're doing for the environment, such as CO2 sequestration, such as, we clean this up or whatever, without having some sort of international standard that you can footnote, which was not defined. Who knows what it is? And I frankly see it as the largest assault on free speech in Canada in my lifetime, because when the largest companies in Canada feel that they cannot speak about things that are even positive, and without fear of millions and millions of dollars of possible liabilities, if they can't speak, how is How are you and I supposed to have any sort of free speech? And this is part of a much broader thing. It's not just the corporate thing. It's part of a host of things that the federal government has brought in the past few years. So Bill C-18, which was the thing trying to get money out of Facebook and Google for news media. Well, Facebook has now pulled all Canadian media. So now you can't access Canadian media through Facebook. Is that not silencing voices? And then we have the Online Harms Act, which is C-63, which is, again, you say things that some people don't like, and oh no, you're an evil person, and you can be brought up on charges. Well, look at what's happening in the UK right now, where grandmas retweeting protests or have police showing up on their doorstep. And then we bring up the C-59. So what's happening is that
you're going to have to put a lot of prisons.
Honest to God, in England, they have said they're going to empty prisons. They're going to take 5,000 people who are actual real felons out of prisons to clear space,
so grandma can go to jail. Saying something wrong.
So we are on this path. We are in 1979 on the way to the Society of 1984, and this is how it happens. If you look back at how authoritarian governments consolidate power and how they, control their people, you look back to just after the Russian Revolution. This is the same sort of thing that's happening. The Leninist-Stalinist pattern. The same thing happened in Germany in the 30s.
Well, let me ask you this, Tracy. Are you nervous talking to here?
No.
Does that make you nervous?
No.
Deidra, should he be nervous?
I don't think so. I mean, we're not selling a product, and I guess this is one of the components that I'm still not really clear about, because under some legal advice that a few of us have received, yes, energy advocacy can be subject to C-59. But if I'm not selling a product, what's my deceptive marketing? I should be allowed to talk.
We're talking some monster effect then. Let's just talk about that for 2 seconds. Joe Rogan, is he done? Is Elon Musk talking done? I mean, we're talking these guys that have
south of the border. They don't
they should be subject.
But Jordan Peterson, is he done?
Well, kind of.
All of these people that are
under another.
But just on general talking in Canada, is that going to be something where all of these guys that have massive podcasts and that are going to be finished?
They're obviously taking it seriously.
I mean, so the Peterson example is a perfect one, because this Bill C-59 models its behavior on what happened to Peterson. So Peterson was brought up on professional charges by the Ontario College of Psychologists, and they said, and people who had never had anything to do with him, never his customers, none of his clients, they complained that one of the things they said was the entire transcript of the Joe Rogan podcast was, out of bounds. And so he has been persecuted and prosecuted by his professional association for his free speech on political issues. And this is exactly the model that C-59 says. And Deidra, you can talk a bit about this, about how, anyone can file a complaint. I mean, you know that a lot better than I do.
So I did go onto the Competition Bureau's website just to see, how easy is it? And let me tell you, if you have basic literacy skills and an internet connection, you can file a complaint. It's a very simple, quick to fill out form. It actually has a question, a yes/no question. Are you a victim? Yes, no, and you check a box. So companies can literally be accused of a victimless crime. And that's under the existing rules. Now, with this amendment, it goes even farther. Next year, June 2025, individuals will be able to file private claims against companies. They can make it up, and it's up to the company to prove that they have not made a misstatement, or that what they have said is accurate. So it's like reverse onus, and I mean, that's just, it's just not...
any more Canadian advertising on anything ever again, CFL, halftime shows, or anything. I'm teasing, but...
Has anybody ever been brought up on these yet? And is there a clear definition of...
It's very new, but here's the thing, is that what she's describing here is just what happened to Peterson. the punishment is the process. The process is the punishment. So now if someone goes on there at 2 o'clock at night in their mother's basement, types up a little thing saying, oh, they said something that was not substantiated by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Well, now you as a corporation, maybe Titus Tools, maybe your oil company Integrity, well, now I got to spend $10,000, $20,000, $100,000 on lawyers just to address this before you even get to any sort of actual
How deep is this, Deidra, though? Have you heard of anybody being brought up on charges and actually being charged since this and actually doing jail time?
I'm not sure about
that's getting really deep.
Like the success rate, maybe I'll call it, but I believe, don't quote me on this, but the stat from last year, so under like the old rules, I believe there were 2,600 environmental related complaints. It's a fair number, so they're already going after. And I think it's important to understand that some of these complaints will be legitimate. They're not all going to be after oil and gas companies. I mean, we do know that there are a lot of companies that make a lot of greenwashing claims. I mean, I'll talk as the female on the panel here about the beauty industry. I mean, there's all kinds of product claims
the fountain of youth.
Yeah, exactly. So, everybody has to take a step back and consider whether we want to become a society that is okay to be censored, where we have to feel like we have to always be careful. If I put out, or a company puts out a post on social media that's maybe a little exaggerative, maybe aspirational, maybe unintentionally says something that they can't quite back up completely, are we okay that we've got a bunch of people coming after them saying, ooh, I want you charged and I want, you to get a $10 million fine? I'm not sure we want to become that society. So we have to really think about this.
All TV shows, all movies and that, we will not be seeing anymore in Canada then, because they might be offensive. Well, you know how many movies have come out that have been controversial in how many years?
Well, don't forget there's a smoking warning.
What's that, Kurt?
If you're looking at an old movie that has smoking in it, there's a smoking warning now.
Well, the thing is that free speech needs to be fundamental. People need to say stuff that other people disagree with. And I might say something that you might think is greenwashing, but I might think is legitimate. And who is to say free speech needs to be able to breathe. It needs to have people to say things that are agreeable and disagreeable. And maybe you like what I said, and maybe you don't.
Yeah, so
but
then
the
moderator is the guy so we have moderators out there in the world going, well, you know what? I don't know. We're going to have to write you up on that.
Well, and you know what that sounds like?
Was I going 99 kilometers an hour? Or was I going 101 kilometers an hour? I don't know. I think really, that's just getting into some sophisticated stuff.
And we saw this stuff under communism. We saw it, you say anything against the party line. And by the way, the party line changes week by week. And you say anything against that, you get taken off to the gulag. Well, here, you'll get either charged with this or, on social media, you might get canceled. I mean, we're chipping away at free speech in every single thing. And everyone in our industry needs to stand up and start screaming about this, because if they can do this to the biggest companies in Canada and shut them up about what the good that they are doing, then what are they going to do about the minor things 5 years from now? What are they going to do 10 years from now when, all of a sudden you said something against electric vehicles? How dare you? Maybe we're going to take away your social license.
It's not policeable. When you create some of these laws, you just look at the vast wave or knowledge of how you're even going to control that. It's just, how are you going to do that, Deidra? There's no, I mean, we're talking 14 bazillion words a day are spoken, and you got somebody sitting there. Yeah, we've got 750 million officers out there checking this stuff. It's not going to happen.
Well, but they don't need to have
I understand
Competition Bureau
that part.
officers, because they have 40 million Canadians to police it.
Well, how? Okay, so we can talk about policing it and things like that, but is it a situation where most companies, Deidra, aren't speaking up because they believe they can just ride this out for a year and 2 months, and there'll be a change in government?
Great question. I think that there is certainly some of that happening. I would suggest to any executive that is leaning in that direction that's probably a bad bet. I don't know what's going to happen in the next election. Nobody does. But I think sitting, hoping, and waiting for government to solve a government-created problem is not the right approach. And so I do think that the companies that have the legal as well as the maybe the internal resources beyond legal, financial, etc., to be able to fight these things, to really consider standing up, saying this is the last one. This is the last one we're going to roll over to. I know it's very difficult. I know it's a risk, but I do think it is time to stand up, and we cannot wait for governments to solve our problems for us. It's great that we have some government advocates. Premier Danielle Smith has already said in other settings I've been in with her that she will use the legal system to push back on C-59, but I don't think that we should be waiting for the government.
Well, if that's the case, then everybody in question period in Parliament Hill are going to be broke, because they're going to be charged they're going to charge each other and write up a complaint, and they're all going to get put away.
But they're not selling it. They're not.
I know.
The thing though is that, even accepting the whole premise of this is the problem, and the fact that corporations are accepting the premise of this and they are hiding, and they've lost their intestinal fortitude. I could use other body parts I could refer to, but the reality is that they need to stand up now, because guess what? Energy industry has become the battered wife syndrome, okay? We got beaten up on pipelines. I built pipelines. We got Alliance Pipeline in the ground in 16 months and operating. They did the same thing for the first Trans Mountain. Well, this one took 4 years because of this sort of stuff. And we keep allowing ourselves to get beaten down and said, you're the devil. Everything you do is bad. We need to stand up, because if we keep falling back, there will be nothing to stand up for. We will be gone.
We got two guys here. One is, what do you do again, Tracy?
Oh, yeah, it's closed my glass.
Yeah.
But we've got a producer here.
Nope.
And we've got.
You said it, I didn't, so I don't have to.
and we've got a gentleman who Brian makes his living writing about oil and gas and touting.
You seem like
oil
on
and
this
gas.
panel that you're very passionate about the oil and gas. I just picked up on that just a few seconds ago. Didn't you, Kurt?
Weird, eh?
How worried should these guys be about the government coming after them?
It's existential. I mean, for me, theoretically, every ad I sell is promoting oil and gas and the benefits. So which means that theoretically, millions of dollars could be brought up on supposed charges for nuisance complaints if someone says, oh, I don't like Brian. Let's see how we can screw him over. So if Titus advertised on my stuff, they could incur, what was it, $500,000 or something like that?
Well, for
3%.
businesses, it's $10 million for the first, $15 million for subsequent, or a 3% of gross worldwide revenue. So I don't know how they'll apply it.
Yeah, so Titus Tools advertises that, we've made a new widget that's going to reduce your energy usage. It's going to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions because you're using less energy to do it. And he puts it on Pipeline Online. Well, do I get charged for that? Does he get charged? Do we both get charged? That is, the reality is, why do we even allow ourselves to think that this is acceptable to be subject to that? I mean, if I ever get charged with this, here's my defense. Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Freedom of speech, that's it. End of discussion. We shouldn't be going beyond that. And yet we got people tying themselves in knots in Calgary. We can't say this, we can't say it. Make sure your people don't say anything to, Stop accepting the premise that this is acceptable. Fight back.
He might be a little passionate about this. I don't know.
Yeah, so let's tie it all back in, because we're going to wrap up.
Yep.
And tie it back into what was some wonderful, super things that happened here at the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Kurt, you start first, then you, then me.
Well, for me, the
MCing was a highlight for you.
What's that?
MCing the
MCing was doing the opening ceremonies was fantastic. Meeting Deidra face to face, having Brian here, those just connecting with people, I think.
Knowing that I'm a producer.
And seeing you again, Tracy, because now that you're a producer, I haven't seen you in forever. Man, we got to start doing more patchwork.
I really enjoy working
Brian
with
needs
you, Kurt.
more of them on his website too. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Deidra?
Well, for me, I have to say it was a highlight getting to listen to Kurt. You did an excellent job emceeing. You're hilarious. I love the banter with Mayor Albers.
Thank you.
You know, it's just the human connection I'm feeling here. Seeing all of this, what gets me excited is the entrepreneurial spirit embodied in this, like these few blocks. These are risk takers. These are visionaries. These are problem solvers in the room, and I love it. This really energizes me, and it encourages me to keep speaking up for the people in the industry, because the people in this industry are incredible. And you guys have been so fantastic to me here. If you ever want me back, you just tell me. I'm coming back
Kurt,
to Lloyd.
you invited.
I thought she was moving here. You live right next to Heartbeat Christie. And you can find her a house, no problem.
Brian, what do you think?
Well, there's a few things. My mission was
Talk
to
about
find.
the oil now, Brian, and how fun you've had here.
Well, my mission was to find out if this multilateral program's working out, and it sounds like that's a big win. So that I was really happy about that.
That's a good point.
I was really excited to hear Premier Smith talk about openly, not being prompted, about the Energy East and Keystone and Northern Gateway, because honest to God, I'm sure Premier Moe was getting tired of every single time for 6 years I asked him, so are we ever going to fight for Energy East again? He's like, well, there's not much more we can do. So to hear that come out from a premier now, because I was the last guy chirping about that, hear that was great. And also hearing Premier Moe call me left-wing media on stage, I thought that was hilarious.
There you go. There's the highlight of the day for the show. For me, coming here as not a vendor, but as a producer, I thought was pretty good. Because normally I'm the patronizing guy, and now I'm just going to go around to finish the show here. Doing the shows with you, Kurt. I just tremendously enjoy working with you on these shows. We find that when we don't script anything, we just do a lot better job. So none of this is scripted, just so you know.
Well, I think it's obvious.
And the other part with Roger and Andrew having them on the show, just saying that the booths are up from the last few shows, which had been some tough years, and that
attendance is up too, by the way.
Attendance is up, and that, you know what, we're just a tough, resilient people here. That it just doesn't matter what we're doing, we always seem to have a time to be able to celebrate oil and gas.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Another
Amen.
highlight, I want to make sure people know this, because I pointed out the other night that Andrew Orchesky's mom Gladys had a tear in her eye. The reason she had the tear is because 20 years ago, almost to the day, Daryl Orchesky was the chairman of this oil show. Now her son is the chairman of the oil show. She watched her husband sit next to Premier Ralph Klein. Now she's watched her son sit next to Premier Daniel Smith. And I can understand why that would be emotional.
For sure. Good story.
Well, first thing I did is when I got off stage was send a text to my brothers and my mom and say, hey, I had like 20-minute conversation with Scott Moe, and we didn't necessarily talk politics. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's been great here. I want to thank the Lloydminster Heavy Oilfield Society, the Technical Society, the Oilfield Technical Society,
Jason
for having
Whiting,
us here.
thank you, Jason,
done a great
tremendously
job.
for helping us produce these shows.
We love coming in here. They allow us to come in here and do a show. We did 3 shows here this week, and we could probably do 6. Like, there's so many people that are willing to talk about their products, and there is a lot of different products here. And that's the other takeaway is you should come down here. There's a luncheon yet, but you can actually see, you can feel the products right in front of you. So come down to the Heavy Oil Show. It's on until 4 this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.